ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಪ್ರಜಾವಾಹಿನಿ ವೀಕೆಂಡ್ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಮಾರ್ಚ್ 8 ವಿಶ್ವ ಮಹಿಳಾ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆಯ ಪ್ರಯುಕ್ತ ಈ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಎಪಿಸೋಡ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಒಂದು ತುಂಬ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರೊಂದು ಡೈನಮಿಕ್ ಲೇಡಿ IAS ಆಫೀಸರ್ ಹೂ ಹಸ್ ಬಿನ್ ಇನ್ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ಓವರ್ 39 years. Being the administrative head, she has been renowned as the common man's most approachable administrator. In her tenure, she has challenged and broken some of the toughest stereotypes. And today, after retiring as the Chief Secretary of the Karnataka state, she is still serving her people as the Chairman of Skill Development Authority. I am pleased to introduce the most inspiring one and only Ratnaprabha IAS. Namaskara ma'am, namma ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Firstly, wish you a very happy Women's Day.
Thank you, same to you.
Thank you ma'am. I'm completely surprised for this time I got with you and I'm elated to do this interview on this special day with an achiever like you.
Oh, you're also an achiever. You're beginning to be an achiever, and I thought it's my responsibility to encourage you by giving this interview.
Totally humbled with the first line itself.
Thank you.
Being an IAS officer itself is a dream, and being a chief secretary is every IAS officer's dream. And you have had the honor and privilege to be the chief advisor for the chief minister on all matters of the state administration. What was your toughest challenge in that process?
I don't think I had any great challenge as such, but becoming a chief secretary itself was a big challenge for me, because as you know, the state has seen very few chief secretaries, lady chief secretaries, and after becoming an additional chief secretary, the next post for me was to be the chief secretary of the state. And there were several people who didn't want me to be the chief secretary. You can call it whatever, whether it was competition or the male domination, or maybe people were scared to have a lady as the chief secretary. I had several hurdles to face, and as you all have noticed, that I should have become chief secretary at least 2 years before I had become chief secretary, but I lost a lot of time, and in the end I was given a very small tenure. So rising and reaching that position was a bigger challenge for me rather than being in the seat, because I have held several posts, so being a chief secretary was not a very tough thing to handle. But during my time, I think we had the elections, so conducting the elections smoothly was a great challenge for us, and also there were several court cases coming up. Dealing with them during a short period was also a great challenge. Otherwise, I think it was okay.
You had an illustrious career for almost 4 decades, which is an achievement on its own. So what is your biggest takeaway in that long journey?
My biggest takeaway is life is a process of learning. It's a continuous process of learning. So every post one does, one keeps learning. There is no end to learning. So I learnt a lot of things. The first thing I learnt was being in administration, there's a lot of expectations from the government, from the people, and as representatives of the government, it is our responsibility and duty to rise up to their expectations. And as I started working with people, I realized that connecting with people is a wonderful thing, and one gets a lot of happiness working for them and doing good for them. In fact, recently I saw one small video which says one feels good doing good for the people.
You are definitely that kind of example.
Yeah, that's what I liked about the service, that it gets you very close to the people. You can do a lot of good things, help people. You can sort of make a change in somebody's life. You can change the sadness into happiness. So I think that's a wonderful thing which one feels being in the service.
Ambition to become the IAS officer, or did you consider other options too?
Yeah, during our generation there was hardly much options like people have. Like one could never think like I could be an anchor like you. That was not heard of. You know, there was no television also when we were studying. So the options were either you become a doctor, or you become a teacher or a lecturer and administrator. But for me, since my father was in the administration and my mother was a doctor, so there were these two options before me. and I chose to be an administrator.
So were you having that pressure that I'm coming from a highly achievers family, so I need to be successful, or it innately came to you that I want to be in services?
There was no pressure as such, but the environment at home was such that one has to have a career. That was very clear, because most of my friends and colleagues, they all, some of them got married or some of them took up very light jobs. But for me, my father was very particular and ambitious that I should write the service, and my mother also was very clear that I have to do something in life. So that has been the priority. There was no diversion of
Your
thought
clarity.
in the family. So it was within me also. There was I had to do something.
So that was the path you laid for yourself.
Yeah.
And in your book also I've seen that you are a very different young girl. The young curious mind suddenly turned out to be an inspiration to many.
Yeah.
So when did you realize that a shift in something like that happened in yourself? Like it's a gradual process, right? But when did you realize that you have already shifted?
I think I realized a little later in life because I kept doing my work, not realizing that I was inspiring people and people were looking up to me. And initially when I went to Bidar as Assistant Commissioner, I was very raw and I was very timid and I was shy and I was unsure of myself because I didn't have a regular training as such. And even otherwise, you undergo a training in an academy that is different because a lot of theory is taught to you. But when you are thrown in the crowd, it's like a baby thrown into a swimming pool. Then the baby learns to swim to save herself or himself. So similarly, like that, when I was thrown into Bidar, which was the most backward district in Karnataka, and they're not seen a woman officer so far. It was a fascination for them to see a young, girl sort of a person coming there to work as an assistant commissioner, and they saw me as an officer. So they came to me with a lot of expectations and problems, and I was there looking at them very unsure from within. So it was a very funny sort of a situation that they all come with a lot of respect and try to share their problems, and I'm like from inside, God, I don't know what to do. These people have so much faith in me. So I started slowly attending to some of the problems, using my common sense, talking to my staff. Fortunately I had very good staff, so who told me what rules could be applied, because they're very clear that I wanted to help. So there are officers who want to help, there are officers who want to be negative, who do not want to help. So once they know that you are there to help, then they all supported me, and I think the local leaders were also very helpful, and that way slowly I started gaining confidence in doing my work. I remember I've written a story about how my DC asked me to go into a village which was having a drinking water problem, and the Tahsildar ran away seeing the crowd, and then the Deputy Commissioner asked me to go. And when I went, the villagers sort of said, see, ma'am is from a village, so she knows the problem of villagers. So I had never gone to a village before I joined the service, maybe once or twice, just crossed villages. But the kind of impression I gave them with my simplicity, that I'm as simple as to be identified with a villager. So I think that's how I never felt bad about it. I felt happy that the people identified me with them, and that's how one by one I started solving the problems. And then when I got transferred, there was a huge crowd which came to see me off. I was supposed to leave in the morning, but I left by evening. They were all crying, I was also crying. So I think that kind of slowly working with them, I felt okay, I could do something good. And then when I went to Chikmagalur also, my Deputy Commissioner told me, you're succeeding a very bright officer and you are facing a big challenge. And then that also again gave me a lot of complex, because my predecessor was very good. So I was like, how am I going to work as good as he has worked? But at the end of the 1 year, I found that people found my own different style of functioning, and I was appreciated even by the Chief Minister and others. So that way, slowly, one by one, while working, I gained my confidence.
Adaptation has definitely been your strength in this process.
Yeah.
But even emotionally, physically, like your appearance, everything has been like a trademark for yourself, which carried your personality. So in the process, how could you always keep yourself grounded? Like what is that point that help you keep grounded all the time?
I think maybe my own family background, where my parents and entire family has been very simple. So, my own approach of being simple and never thinking too much about myself or my dressing or things like that. I've been like that from childhood. So, I think that same thing continued. I didn't change after I got into service, which normally people think that once you get into a service or when to get into a powerful post, you need to change your attitude, you need to change your behavior, you need to show that you are somebody. So I think that is something which didn't get into me.
No,
I
you
try to
yourself
be
were a
my-
strong personality as such.
and I continue to be that, and I think I gained confidence in being what I am. Initially, people, when you see others dressing up in a particular way or others behaving in a particular way, you do get rattled at times, but I continued my personality and maintained it.
That's great to know. And you worked with different personalities with different ideologies, and you had the honor and privilege to work with chief ministers from Ramakrishna Hegde to Yediyurappa, like completely different personalities.
Yeah.
So, in a situation where you had a conflict, how did you deal with that when you had to do something? The responsibility asked you to do a required job, but you felt that was not the right thing, but you had to still go ahead and do. So, how did you manage that conflict within yourself?
I don't think there was any conflict as such. I don't remember having those kind of conflicts, but yeah, when there were situations which probably were right, I have done it. Where I felt was not right, I brought it to the notice of the chief ministers or to my deputy commissioner, saying this is not right and this is what I feel is right, and sometimes, most of the times, it was accepted. So I did not feel that kind of pressure. But yes, at times in a particular district when you are working, there would be one MLA or one leader who did not understand or gel with your point of view. But more or less, I had the support of my seniors on my point of view, so it was okay. I could
Not
handle
only the support of the seniors, but the people. Like in my research, I've seen that the northern areas, Bidar, Gulbarga, Belgaum, like name it any area, any district, they treat you no less than like a god. I'm like, that kind of admiration doesn't usually happen with the bureaucrats,
servants, I
right?
know.
And what do you feel about that?
No, I feel very blessed actually. I am also sometimes I wonder how these people, initially I started my career as a very young officer, and when I went there again after 10 years, I became their Amma. They started calling me Amma, and yes, people do keep my photographs in their houses, and they also have named their children.
You're fondly called as their daughter, then later you became their amma, then later you were like their god, like the gradual growth in their hearts, and it's continuing to grow.
That's because those areas are very, very backward, and they need lot of help and support from the government. And I am very accessible and approachable to them compared to the others. That's what, I'm not boasting, but many of them, I asked them also that why after so many years, 30, 35 years of my service in a particular area, it's almost like a generation. How do you people remember me? Why do you come to me? So they say that when we see the others, we remember when you were there, we didn't know your value, but now that you have gone away, we know your value, and we feel that whenever we come to you, you are there for us. So they somehow feel I'm part of them rather than being an officer, because after I've left the place and gone away, after 35 years they come, they think I'm part of them, and they can come to me and they will find a solution in me. So when that is the attitude of the people, I feel it's a responsibility thrust on me to resolve their problems, because they come with so much expectations, and I don't feel like letting them down. So I try to find ways and means of helping them if it is within the law, and if it is not possible, I'll tell them that this is not possible. So, and make them understand why it's not possible. So, I think that way, I think a very wonderful bond has been developed between people of that area and myself.
Yeah, you truly belong to that area is
Yeah.
what so many
Many
people
people think I am born in Gulbarga or I am born in
True,
Bidar.
true, true.
Lot of people ask me, are you a native of Gulbarga? I say, yeah.
No, you truly belong there. So when you were starting off as the assistant commissioner, be it the water problem in Bidar, the special Dwakra project in Chikmagalur, or the Devdasi rehabilitation in Raichur, every project required a different approach from you. And you yourself were like completely clueless about the projects you are taking forward. So what kept you drive like so strongly you went forward, and at that point were you having doubts on yourself?
No, I never had doubts as such, because see, my way of working is that when I see a problem, I want to find a solution for it. So once you are very clear that you want to find a solution for it, you will definitely find a solution in the government. So when there was a drinking water problem in Bidar during my time, at that time people were drawing water from the wells. There were no bore wells also. So the bore well scheme had just come. So we started going from village to village and drilling the bore wells, and as the water used to gush out, the kind of happiness people used to find and see, I also used to rejoice with them. Similarly, when I went to Chikmagalur, the Dwakra program was just a new program. It was a pilot for women empowerment, and we had to form groups of women because individual women could not be economically independent. That was the idea then. So we had to form groups of women. So when we had also field level workers, women workers. So when we went there, talked to women, we did make groups, and then we found a lot of enthusiasm. See, what people don't understand is everybody is intelligent and everybody is looking for some solution from the government. So when we go there and tell them this is the scheme, they come up with ideas. So it becomes easier for us to resolve the problem. The women themselves said, we don't want to do papad and pickle and all that. We want to do carpentry, we want to make cane chairs. They wanted to coffee plantations. So the deputy commissioner gave them some lands. So the ideas come from them. It's not that we have to do it. Similarly, when I was doing the Devdasi rehabilitation, the Devdasis told me that don't give us milch animals because our milk cannot be sold. Don't give us tailoring because who will come to us for tailoring? Do something for us where we can get economic benefit. That is how the idea of giving lands came to them, because land is something which can be cultivated and we can get
Can
income.
we think that being a woman, you naturally are inclined to work more on women empowerment and take projects on that, or on overall the districts?
I work for everybody generally, but wherever I work, I do something specific for women. And that the story I've already mentioned, that one teacher in Chikmagalur, he came to meet me, Kashinath. He told me that the men come, do for men and go, and if the women officers come, they also do for men and go, then who will do for women? So when a lady officer comes, she has to consciously do something for women. He said, I'm a small man, but I want to guide you. So that I think wisdom which he gave me, in my second posting, it was very good. So now wherever I go and wherever I speak, I remember him, because in my every posting I've done something for women, and I was very surprised to get in touch with him. He's now 80 years old, and his student made a film on him, and in that film he mentioned about me.
Wow.
So the student came to contact me, and I said, whatever I'm doing for women now, I owe it to him actually, because he was the one who told me those golden words.
Even in Vizag, when you were on deputation, you have brought a very important industrial policy for women, which was never thought before. And that sector itself was never given to a woman. So what were your experiences in that process?
No, generally, as I mentioned, the women have a lot of potential. Women have the interest and capacity to do whatever which a man can do. Only thing is, they need to be identified and they need to be encouraged and ask them to support them, then they will do it. But people generally think women cannot do certain things and they don't have programs for them. But once we think that why can't they do it, they will do it. In fact, they do much better than what we expect from them. Yeah.
And you proved it to all of us that a woman can actually do and reach the highest positions possible.
Definitely, definitely.
Even when on deputation only, I think you have been working in Hyderabad also in Film Censor Board. The board was completely grateful that you brought the industry to Hyderabad. And not just that, even the IT sector, like not many know about it, but the full-fledged IT sector was developed in your tenure only. So at that point, what were the thoughts that were going on in your mind? Did you think that this vision, what you're going to create, is going to be this huge today?
I didn't think about that. When I went to the Film Censor Board in Hyderabad, my only aim was to go home and be with my husband because I was just married. And that was one post available to go to Hyderabad. But the way we worked morning till evening, censoring films at a very short period, giving the certificate without any corruption, and the producers were very happy because we had a very clean administration. Later on, after 10 years, 10 to 20 years, I realized the entire film industry had moved towards Hyderabad, otherwise it was in Chennai. So that's a great contribution, and all the top film producers, directors, film stars, they remember me with a lot of respect and regard. So that is something I got to know after 30 years. Similarly, when I was posted as IT secretary also, it was a new post for me. Only thing is, seeing my dedication and my sincerity, the chief minister posted me. And he just told me one thing, that you need to do good work, bring my government a good name. And that was always pricking me that I should do the best and prove to the world and to the IS also that a lady can be an IT secretary and she can do much better than a man can do.
That's such diverse topics like industrial sector, film censor board, IT sector, such diverse sectors had shaped you in a different, as a different person only. In that process, do you think your personality enhanced because you worked with different sectors?
See, the beauty of IAS is you work in different sectors. You are here for 1 year or 2 years and go to the other. But definitely it develops our overall personality, because you work in different sectors, you meet different people. But I feel I had a very wonderful career where probably which others did not experience, like working with the film industry. I don't think anybody would get that opportunity. Working with the big giants in the sense for them, for the IT sector, working with the big industrialists,
Top notch.
so everybody, and dealing with politicians anyway, because you are in the government. So I think I had a varied and variety of experience.
I'm sure you would have enjoyed that run. You have been a workaholic all your life.
I'm grateful to God that I got.
But in this, do you miss, ma'am? Do you miss something okay, you have had a beautiful career with a wide variety of careers which you have touched and successfully achieved whatever milestones you had. But do you think you missed something in that process?
No, I think I miss working. That's what I realized. Because when I retired, everybody said, why don't you rest? Then after a month or so, I realized that
you cannot.
Resting is not giving me happiness. So it is work which is giving me happiness. So I came to a conclusion that whatever I was doing for the 40 years, that was the only thing which was giving me.
We are truly blessed on that note that we get to see your services for more longer time.
So I think it's work which gives me a lot of happiness, because I'm a very positive minded person and I like to do things for others, and I like to see happiness on the face of others. So
you find fulfillment in that.
So that gives me happiness. So though I thought I must have missed something in life, but I don't think there's anything beyond work in my life, because I didn't find anything better than working.
No, your vision is clear. You want to keep serving people and helping people.
But in weekends and all, I've enjoyed going for movies. I
wanted to ask you the next thing. Do you unwind or do you always are in work?
No, I see movies and I also spend some time with my family. I've spent time with my close friends, but I do. But I realized that after some time, again, my mind goes back to something where somebody had said something and I had to solve somebody's problem. So that is always,
a nudging thought that I have to come back to work.
Yeah.
My
not this
goodness.
way.
So what drives you in all this? Like what is that that's pushing you always? Service. Is that what you always want to give?
Yeah, that I realized over a period of time that is what has given me the happiness. Doing something all the time for the, it's more for the people than to the society, individuals. I like to solve problems of the individuals and
In fact, I also wanted to ask you the same. Your thoughts and initiatives not only helped poor people but also your subordinates,
Yes.
and so many of them appreciate your sensibility and your timing. So I wanted to ask you, where do you get so much energy in solving so many different kinds of issues?
see, the more you work with them, when you see their face, you realize whether they're troubled or whether they're disturbed. So I think the sensitivity which a woman has maybe is little less in a man. So when I look at a subordinate, when he comes to me with a file, I immediately realize if things are not good. I ask him, what has happened? Are you not well? Or is something troubling you? So they feel very emotional that I have able to judge. Then they share their problem. Yes, today this has happened, or this is what he's feeling. Then I just whatever advice I can give, consult a doctor, or if it's something personal, whatever advice I can give, I give it to them. So, but when they are not doing a particular work, also I'm tough with them. I scold them and I shout
Make
at
sure
them.
your work is done.
Then work is done. So when I got transferred, in one of the speeches, my subordinates told in the speech that though madam used to always scold us for not doing our work, we knew why she was doing it, because it was in the interest of administration, and we are going to miss her scoldings. Just like a child feels it, when a mother scolds, she scolds because she wants to make the child better. Similarly, when she scolds us, it is the motherly touch that we should do well for the people. So the scolding also has sweetness.
So
in
you
that.
had a beautiful balance between the officer you are and the mother you are.
So I was very happy to hear this kind of an interpretation from one of the subordinates.
That's beautiful actually.
Yeah.
The way he said is as a mother is scolding the child.
And we also know that we have done a mistake in keeping a file or delaying it or troubling somebody, and her scolding is genuine. So they feel bad, and they said we'll miss it. I said,
And you know how to get your work done and how to keep the team strong and together. That's amazing, ma'am. Your first book, The Chronicles of A.C. Saab, has been completely engaging, and I couldn't close the book. I just wanted to finish it in one go. Though it was a small portion of your career, it was truly entertaining also, like, and somewhere it was heart touching, somewhere it was like we could know more about you personally. So when can we expect the next book, and when is it hitting the stands?
I think the Chronicles of an A.C. Saab was about my first posting, and how much the people of Bidar, loved me, and how I learned administration from them. And it was very interesting for me to also know that after 35-36 years, my memories of my first posting were so strong. Probably if I was, if I had recorded most of the events at that point of time, I would have had a more interesting book, because I know so many memories have faded. But when it comes to my second book, there are lot of things I can write.
Controversies?
More of controversies. It's a problem. It will be more about how a woman finds it very difficult to survive, even in her service. It's because IS is supposed to be, the cream service, and people think that in different sectors or areas, women find it difficult to work or to grow. But it's not like that. Even in a service like this, it's very tough. And sometimes I sort of think how well I've handled so many situations without the world knowing what was happening. So I have to get that much of time and emotional stamina to record, unpleasant things. Because this has been a very, Bidar has been a very pleasant experience, and everybody's support, there's except little bit of trouble here and there by some.
Acceptance was huge.
Yeah, But otherwise, I could record it. But the next phase is going to be a very
Balancing act for
very
you.
tough book. It has a lot of interesting stories.
So when can we expect that?
I haven't yet started. I just hold my pen and a book, but then I get into work. But I will do it.
So with your wisdom and experience,
Yeah, I will.
you need to put that out there so that we all get to know the other side of an IAS officer
Yes.
too.
How difficult it is to survive with a smiling face.
That's the more important point.
Because the people never knew what I was going through.
Because you never showed
I
it,
never
right?
showed
For you,
it.
it's always
Yeah.
the straight smiling
Yeah.
face.
There is a problem happening, but there are people sitting in front, so you keep the problem at the back, solve the problem. You can't tell them that you are troubled because they are looking at you with expectations, and that is how the whole.
I think
most
a
of the
woman
journey-
like you can pull it off.
Okay, yeah.
Otherwise, it's not an easy task.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult.
So where do you think that much of strength, the inner strength came? Like, see, you were a sports player, a TT state level player, and later an Achievers family. Of course, when you put all together, we can say you as a strong person. But do you think that sportsmanship, personality, all that helped you go through these tough challenges smoothly?
See, it's like this. I mean, you also must have felt the same thing. When you are a child, you are very much protected by your family and your children. I was the only daughter, I had two elder brothers. So, more or less a pampered child, like anybody else. And then you are, thrown into a different state. You come into Karnataka, which is your neighboring state, and you don't know your language, you don't know the people. And you come alone. Of course, my parents used to come once in a way. And that is how, I started my career. Then as you move ahead and go into different jobs and postings and all that, life teaches you. Because the human body is such that it can take any amount of stress. But only thing, you don't know how much stress you can take because you have not taken it. And once you start taking the stress and you start overcoming it, then you realize the body and the mind has the ability to take some sort of a stress.
Only when you look back, you understand.
Then you go through another stress, and then your body gets used to tackling issues and problems and being normal. And then over a period of time, you realize that you have tackled so many issues and you have emerged as a strong person. And then you think, God, yeah, my personality has changed. I was such a timid, shy person, so scared to go out into the world, and now how life has.
I'm where I'm standing and inspiring like how many people.
Life has. So only life teaches you lessons. Life's, I think, experiences, the people you encounter, the kind of turmoils that come into your life, and how you overcome them and emerge successful, then that makes you a strong person.
Wow.
So my philosophy is, I will not allow the other person to trouble me. Let him go on troubling me and get tired of troubling me. But I am not going to get troubled.
But to
I'm going to
maintain
face
that vision and just go with that one line,
They
is
should
not-
get tired.
So with this experience, for young aspirants who want to pursue civil services, what advice do you want to give them?
No, civil services I feel is the best service even now to, for youngsters as one of the careers in the country, because people still look up to government service as one of the best services, and definitely civil services is the best. Amongst them, I find IAS is the best because you can directly interact or talk to the people. So it's a good career. And especially for women, it's a very good career. When a lot of girls are now coming into the IAS and the IPS. Earlier, during our time, it used to be 10%. Now it's almost 30 to 40% in almost all the services. So it's a very good service. And once you get into the service, you should not forget for what you have written the exam. So what happens is people write the exam with the vision of doing something for the society or for the people. Some of them become complacent once they get in. They forget
The
purpose is forgotten. Some people, the moment they face a problem, they think, let's step back. Some people don't at all try to do something. Some people try to do something, and as they go through bad experiences, they take a back seat and they try to go with the wind. So I think for people who want to think differently and do differently is a tough road in the service. But at the end of the day, I think that is what gives you the happiness, that yes, I had that, but you should have the guts and the what do you say, conviction, guts, and also the stamina to face the situations and move it. But at the same time, I am not saying that when I mean being tough, being negative. There are some people who are always negative, doing negative things, getting transferred all the time, and then say I was tough when I was shifted. I am not talking of that. I am saying trying to do good to the people, being positive, facing hurdles and moving ahead. That is what a civil servant has to be. Not trying to do negative things and getting transferred and then pointing out that I have been transferred. Then there is no
fulfill
purpose.
the purpose, like you have come for a purpose, serve it.
Serve it. There is no point in being negative and doing nothing. At the end of your 30-35 years, you look back and see what have I done, and you find that you have not done anything.
But not everybody are as aspiring like to serve. Like they do come for the fancy job or the way it looks like in the society. But the service motive.
That's because now, because of social media, there's lot of visibility for civil servants. So many people see that visibility also, and many don't even know for what they're writing the exam. They're just writing the exam because of the glamour or because of the good career opportunity it gives, a stable career. Some people think it gives a lot of prestige, some people think it gives a lot of power. So they think differently and come. So for me it was not like that, because I've seen my father working for the people and doing good for the people, and that gave him a lot of pleasure. So I also thought the service is meant for only for that.
You didn't know any other way.
You know this kind of, these things come. You have to see how you can manage. You will get glamour, you will get power, you will get a lot of visibility. But how do you handle it and how well you handle it?
How you help others and how you handle
that visibility for the positive. You should not be carried away by the glamour and the
purpose is gone.
That is the thing.
Your current position as the chairman of the skill development is trying to launch so many schemes for the grassroots level of the society and the remotest of the villages. But how many of them actually know that government is doing these projects? So how do you think you can help these projects reach to the deeper roots of the state and all the corners of the state basically?
Basically, our responsibility here is to, as an authority, is to give suggestions to government on the ongoing programs. So presently we have only one program, which is the CNKKY program, which talks about skilling and funding the training providers. So what we have suggested is, in addition to whatever is happening, why not we take the industries, the big companies, industry associations, the Chamber of Commerce which are there at the district level, and convert them into training providers, because they are the ones who already are linked to the industry. Find out from the industry association what is the gap, skill gap there, and we can fund them to train so that the girls and boys can be trained within the industry or by the industry association and given employment. So that way we would be reaching the unemployed at the district level at least, if not the village level, because if you have these training centers which are urban based, they are supposed to provide employment.
True.
They train and then they are supposed to look for employment. So rather than talking of employment, can we think of employability? Like you go to send a child to a school, we are not talking of employment, we are talking of the child becoming employable, educated. Similarly, can these training centers be more focused on employability than creating employment, because otherwise then they will be only thinking fudging figures to show that they have employed. That is one thing. Taking these industries, associations, the corporates, the Chamber of Commerce, then the service sector or the logistic hubs, etc., taking them and training them locally so that the local employment is created. In addition to that, we are also talking to various sector councils. There are about 30-35 sectors councils, sector council for aerospace, for textiles, different sector councils. Whether we can work with them and find out how much of rural employment can be created through these sector councils, because sector skill councils these are called. So we may not be aware of so much the skills required in the market. So if we talk to these sector skill councils, they may tell us how much of employment is employment can be created in different sectors and what could be the potential. So we are having a meeting and discussion with that. At the same time, we are also thinking of sending people abroad. We have the International Migration Center here, which is right across my office, and here this center will become a center where the boys and girls who are wanting to go abroad for employment, this will become the focal point. From here, you know, all the pre-departure formalities will be completed.
Wow.
So that the boys and girls,
Not many are even aware of this.
they don't get cheated.
Okay.
So they are trying, and we want to have district level centers where the
So here it's only for the job opportunities
It's
or
to
for
go
their
in-
higher education also?
No, only for job
Only for job
opportunities.
opportunities.
So we're thinking of different, then we're also thinking of encouraging startups in the skill center, because presently any entrepreneur who has to run a center, he needs to have 3 years experience. He needs to have an amount of turnover, etc. So if somebody wants to do a training in a particular area which is new and which is not listed in the 300 odd, you know, skills that talks of, can we encourage them as a startup or as an entrepreneur?
That would be an amazing
Because we
initiative.
have a startup for ITBT, we have a startup for industry. Why not have startups in the skill also? Because there are a lot of people coming to us saying that there is a need, like people like you who are into anchoring, people into journalism, people into film shooting, people want training in drone. So these kind of different kind of training programs the youth are interested in. And we don't have people with 3 years experience to
Correct. All
train
our
them.
startups, right,
All
will
our
come
startups.
in.
So why don't you encourage startups in the skill also? So these kind of suggestions we have given to government, and as we go into villages, talk to people, you realize that the dropout of children is after 8th or 9th class, and the employment is after 18, whereas the dropout is at the age of
So how do you
13 or
bridge the
14.
gap there?
What do? Do you wait till they are 18 and skill them, or do you skill them and wait till they are 18? So it's a very catch 22 situation. So we looked up at the policy and we found that the labor laws and ILO also suggest that after 14 years children can be skilled and they can be given lighter jobs, not hazardous jobs. So we have proposed to government, can the skilling start at 14 so that the dropouts
Currently it starts only from 16.
18. So why do the dropouts, why do they will be wasting their time, they will become vagabonds. So why not we train them? That is one. And the second thing is also what we have recommended to the government is many children, our education is a structured education.
True.
Science, maths, physics,
Boring
subjects. So when a child comes to 8th class, the child gets bored. Or child may not have
Physical
the
energies are more, you can't make them sit in a classroom.
and child may not have the aptitude to do those things, but the child might have aptitude for others. So as the national education policy has said that we can have skilling in schools, we are saying why don't you start skilling in schools, so that the child instead of taking maths or science can take some subjects and be a better student and complete school rather than dropping out. So we can reduce the dropout by introducing skills in the schools, and we have those kind of schools in Karnataka, surprisingly 10 of them, called the junior technical schools, where skilling is taught in the
As a
school
part of education.
So we have recommended to government, why not this be introduced in various social welfare hostels, Morarji
The reach
Desai
is
schools
more
are
when
more.
government is initiating.
Yeah, so this is what we are, because ours is basically a recommendatory body, so we have whatever.
I'm sure you will do your best
Yeah,
even
whatever
here.
I find, whatever recommendations come from the field, we take it up, examine and recommend to the government.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that elaborate, long information about all the sectors that's available right now. And it's actually new for us to know
Yeah.
that government has such schemes.
Yeah, because skill is a new department, it needs more focus, more publicity, and we are trying to work towards that.
In your busy schedule, you still always kept your ground strong and always had time for initiatives which are closer to your heart. be it the Ubuntu group for purpose. Like it has shown its visibility by your presence.
Yes.
So how do you feel that empowering women has helped you being in this position, and how you are bringing more women into this group and make the visibility more?
Yeah. As I told you, I've always found a lot of pleasure working with everybody. But when I started working with women, I found there was a lot of enthusiasm in them, much more than what I could see in others. That was basically because nobody was giving them time. They were left by themselves. So when they found somebody who was giving them this kind of an attention, I could see the double enthusiasm in them. So once there is an enthusiasm from the other side, you also feel like doing.
You are
something
already on the go.
them.
You push them a lot
So
more.
I really like doing this, and when I was in industries and commerce, we did a lot for women entrepreneurs, and I found there were so many women associations who were trying to help their members, but they were not able to reach the government. Even if they could reach the government, they were not getting the right result from the government. So I said, why not we all make a consortium of these associations, because one association may have 100, another may have 50, another may have 200, but alone you can't. But when you come together, you form thousands, you become a larger number, and you can become a good protest group or a good demanding group from the government, and that is how we all formed this
So
consortium.
what made you, like how easy or tough was it in that process of?
No, it was not tough, because all the ideas started coming from the women only. They said, let us form this group, let us work together, and then they only give us.
And
lot
when
of
they have an
target-
officer like you, it would be even more easier for them to get approached to the government.
So we started taking up issues with government. Today also I am very happy that some of the budget announcements which the Chief Minister has made have been given by our group, like 4% interest to the women entrepreneurs, and loan up to 2 crores. And also the Elevate program, budget for women entrepreneurs, Elevate, all that was given by us.
That's a special Women's Day gift for all of them.
That's what I tweeted, that it is a gift from the
When you
Chief
speak
Minister.
about tweeting, ma'am, I have to mention, you make sure that you're always visible on social media, be it Twitter, be it Facebook, your updates are always there, and your connectivity with your people is always there. What made you pick it up so quick? Like, officers wouldn't mind, right? You make sure you do it. So what is the intention?
Actually, I was also not knowing much about social media till I think around 2015-16, when I was in industries. We started this Twitter handle for Invest Karnataka. It was started by the industries department. And once that my tenure was over, the lady handed over the handle to me, showed it how I should operate it. And when I looked at it, I found several issues pertaining to government cropping up. Youngsters, especially youth, were tweeting about the Karnataka Open University, about not getting certificates, or some people who were selected by the KPSC, but they were not being issued their appointment order and all that. So when I started looking at those tweets, I interacted with the concerned departments, because by then I was additional chief secretary, so I had the general subject. So I started interacting with the departments and try to resolve their problems. So I saw this as this handle as one of the modes of hearing public grievances.
You're already approachable. People can come and walk into your office. You're again approachable on through the social media also.
So that's how I slowly started, talking to the people through the Twitter, resolving their issues, and then one by one tweeting about my own work, my own feelings. And one of those tweets which I tweeted caught the Prime Minister's attention.
Exactly. You have been reaching and you have just been growing. So what is the next step, ma'am? Like, you have been into the services for almost 4 decades and you're still serving. So what more can we expect? Your fan base is waiting for you to come into the politics and just contest and just serve them directly. So what are your intentions on that, and where are you going to contest from?
I don't have any specific programs, plans of, I generally don't think of my future. That is very important. I don't have future plans or anything like that. I take life as it comes and as it moves ahead. Of course, I joined the BJP, and but the present job which I am doing is more of an administrator's job. And if any opportunity comes my way, I'll grab it. I'm just waiting.
We are waiting for your services. We are here to take, okay, whatever you have to offer, we are there to take it and support
it's
you.
left to the party to offer something to me, and I'm just waiting. If something better is given, I will.
You are truly ready to serve.
Ready to take it up.
All the best. We are waiting for those services and see much more dimensions which we haven't seen. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your presence and giving us so much time and elaborately explaining about all the schemes and your services and your life journey more than anything. We derive a lot of inspiration from you, and thank you for this beautiful session I had.
So thank you very much. It was wonderful having this interaction with you. I also felt very nice going down the memory lane, and I wish you and Prajavahini a wonderful journey ahead.
Wishing your services reaches the remotest of the villages with no barriers of socio-economic differences, and people remember you as a visionary in their hearts forever. Thank you so much for all the time and all the services you have been offering us. ತುಂಬ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
ಲೇಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅಪ್ಡೇಟ್ಸ್ಗಳಿಗಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಚಾನಲ್ನ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಆಗಿ ಬೆಲ್ ಐಕಾನ್ ಒತ್ತಿ. ಇನ್ನಷ್ಟು ಅಪ್ಡೇಟ್ಸ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್, ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಾಗ್ರಾಮ್, ಟ್ವಿಟರ್ ಪೇಜ್ನ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಆಗಿ.